Howdy, 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 folks. Today we are going to be changing the speaker in my Ampeg GVT15-112 from the Celestion 7080 to the Warehouse G12CS. The issue with this amp is not that the amp sounds bad. It actually sounds really good. But the problem is that when I start playing single coils with pedals and other stuff, it's just really crispy into the amp when I put a dynamic microphone in front of it. And I'm putting the mic all the way to the edge of the speaker cone, and it's still really, really bright and crispy and sizzly sounding until I turn the treble knob down to like 9 o'clock. And that lops off a good amount of the volume, right? Now, I don't really care about the volume because this amp gets plenty loud, so I don't really care that I'm losing some volume. So, you know, those upper mid frequencies are just a bit harsh with single coils. And the Celestion 7080 is kind of notorious for this problem. This amp, or this speaker, was the stock speaker in the Marshall DSL-15 and DSL-40 combo amps for many years, and people reported kind of the similar things. It's like the amp sounds kind of fizzy, it's pretty bright, but you change the speaker out and some of that goes away. So I think this speaker sounds fantastic with humbuckers. It really helps humbuckers sit in the right zone, but single coils is just a bit too much lift in the upper mids. But another reason is that, you know, this amp is inherently based on an American design. Ampeg, you know, was an American company. The VT amps from back in the day that were used by the Stones and by Queens of the Stone Age, and by, you know, and the Reverb rocket amps used by the Cars were all made in America and had American speakers like the Jensens, the EVs and the JBLs, right? And this Celestion speaker doesn't really sound like that. It has the push and those glass and chime frequencies that Celestions have. And for some reason, this one doesn't have the nice smoothness of the greenback. It has harshness in the upper frequencies instead. So I could try a greenback, yes, but everyone plays the greenback. I want to try an American speaker that captures more of the spirit of American amps. I want something that pushes this amp in the direction of a deluxe reverb or Princeton reverb. Does that make me a bit of a purist? Yeah. You know, but I don't care. I'm a bit of a snob, I guess, and I'm trying to not be a snob in a bad way, but it really is just me wanting to try something new, and I think that this speaker is going to help. Is the replacement much better? And that's the question we're going to answer. So let's hear how the speaker sounds, and then we'll swap it, and then we'll do all the back-to-back comparison samples so that everyone doesn't complain, "Oh, you didn't do a good comparison." Okay, let's go. Today's the day. The Warehouse G12CS has arrived. 8 ohms. I went for the 8 ohm impedance because basically I was reading, and the 8 ohm variants versus the 16 ohm variants sound different, and the 16 ohms tend to have a bit more treble response, and I figured I need something a little darker, especially for this amp. So let's open it up, and then we'll put it in the amp. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So it looks like we got some foam for the front of it, in case we need to add some. Maybe there isn't any to begin with. This thing to hold, make sure nothing is falling off. Carefully remove this bit. Then we have, wow, that's large, the speaker. Looks great. Let's get it out of the plastic wrap here. Save the box, because we have to make sure that it works first, of course, and all that business. It would be foolish to throw the box out and then the speaker to not work and then not be able to send it back. I'm trying to figure out, okay, here's the connectors, so I want to not hit those while I'm doing this. I haven't done an unboxing video in a long time. Ah, there's the, I knew that, or I figured, oops, I didn't touch this around too much. Okay. Oh yeah, that's nice. So I'm wondering why they included this stuff. Maybe it's if you want to put extra foam on top of the cork. I really don't know. And there was no documentation in the box, so I have like no freaking idea. Oh gosh. Sorry, my lapel mic came off. Okay, hopefully that's better. All right, so I'm really confused as to what to do with this foam because there was no documentation with this speaker at all. It just came as it is. Oop. And just like on the website, we have this cork surround, but I'm not sure, do I need to put the foam on? Is it just kind of there in case I need a little extra space in front of the speaker? But yeah, so we have a seamless, wow, I don't know how they did this, how you do a seamless cone, but everything looks to be really nice and, you know, yeah, it looks to be made very well. And you can see there's a felt dust cap down there, so let's get a zoom in on that. So the dust cap is felt, which is supposed to help with some of the high-end response to make it a little smoother. And then, as you can see, the cone has no ribs in it at all, which is supposed to further make this speaker smooth. So let's, now you do want to be careful with speakers. You don't want to break their, you know, this thing is heavy. It's got a heavy magnet. It's easy to drop. One of the things that I love about this, and I know I shouldn't, you know, worry too much about this, is I love the orange surround. It just looks phenomenal, and I wish I could see it all the time because it just looks great. So I wish they did that on more of their speakers. 8 ohms, 75 watts. So I'm very excited to try this speaker out in my amp, and I'm hoping that it will improve the sound tremendously over the stock speaker and all of that. There appears to be the speaker surround is going into the holes. So I'm not sure what I should do about that other than just ram the screws right through it, or if I need to drill it out or not. So I guess when I put the screws in, they're going to be going through that, but I don't want to like twist and pull it. But it appears, everything appears to be glued in really well, so that's my one worry, is that the holes, yeah, as you can see, are not fully open. So this surround is cork here. And yeah, it's not the lightest thing in the world. It's pretty heavy. But yeah, I'm super stoked to try it out. You can see the voice, doing all of this off camera. You can see the voice coil in there, or the surround, the voice coil support inside of there. Zoom out a bit. So yeah, I'm super stoked on this speaker. And yeah, we're gonna try it out in the amp. So I want to record a few more playing samples with the stock speaker, and then we'll get to installing and playing this one. It's time to remove the old speaker, so I have the amp here on the table. Sorry if the camera's shaking, it's on like a big stick. It just kind of, it's a big moment arm, so it's hard to keep it from wobbling around. So I got my ratcheting screwdriver here, and we'll take off the back of the amp and then take out the speaker and put in the new one. So wish me luck. Now the thing with these screws is that they're wood screws, so they're going straight into the cabinet, and I want to be careful when I tighten them that they're snug so that they won't come out, but they're also not going to strip. You really don't want to over tighten it, because then you got to you know, fill and drill, fill and re-drill, and that's not something you want to do to your cabinet. Yeah, it's a little toasty in there. Okay, so a couple of things need to happen for me to get the speaker out. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'll bring you right in, and the tubes are going to be toasty, so I can feel that the chassis is warm of the amp. The preamp tubes less so. Okay, I'm not getting burned, so that's a good sign. This amp has 4 screws that hold the speaker in the diagonal positions, so we can remove those. But first I'm going to remove the speaker cable. Now, this speaker is a 16 ohm speaker, so I'm removing it from the 16 ohm position and I'm putting it in the 8 ohm. If you are replacing a speaker in your amp, never mismatch the impedance, especially if it's really far off from like 4. If your speaker is 16 ohms and your amp output's 4 ohms, don't do it. That's going to be bad. It's not as bad if you do 8 to 16 mismatch and you run it at low power, but you still shouldn't do it. It's just not a good idea. The transformers and the power tubes are designed to see a close match for impedance, not something that's completely far off. So I'm gonna put this, I'm gonna tuck it like that so it's out of my way, and now let's remove the speaker itself. So we'll see if I have to move the tubes out of here. I've wanted to replace this speaker for a very long time. So the official name of this speaker is the Celestion G12P-80, or as its common name is the Celestion 7080. So we have machine screws here with lock washers holding it in to the baffle. So there is, at some point we do have kind of machine inserts somewhere in there. Now Celestion makes really good speakers, but I don't like this speaker because, not because it's Celestion, but because it's a cheap Celestion. And cheap Celestions, they've kind of gotten a reputation, I think, from some people, and maybe this is fair and maybe it isn't, but as not the best sounding speakers. So, we're so close to getting it out. Can just get it around the reverb tank. So notice this speaker looks totally different. The doping extends far into the cone. The cone is ribbed, so we have 7 ribs, right? 8 ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 ribs. A really large dust cap. This dust cap is much bigger. The speaker overall is much lighter too. So even though they're rated for a similar wattage, I think some of that has to do with the basket design. You can see there's much bigger holes. They're gonna make it lighter. But the magnet is also physically smaller, I noticed, compared to the other one. Still looks good. It still looks like it was when it was made, I think. So 16 ohms, what it says, and the GP80, 16 ohm. So have a look right there at the label. Not doing a good job of showing this stuff. You can see the wires and then the voice coil cover down in there. But yeah, it's time for this speaker to go on to greener pastures in a different amplifier. So, and if you want it, I'll probably put it up for sale. I don't know. I'm debating on how long I want to keep this speaker around, because I might find a use for it for a different amp someday, but I'm not hopeful based on the... Okay, so now we need to bring in the new one. Let's do a comparison visually here real quick while I have the amp open. So the Warehouse has this kind of purple cone, which I love, and it's smooth. Small dust cap, you can still see the wires going down into the voice coil. Celestion's dust cap completely covers. You can see the doping extends much further, and we have the ribs in the speaker cone, whereas the Warehouse is completely smooth. Now, not all Warehouse speakers are completely smooth. This one happens to be one of the models that does have a completely smooth cone. So let's bring our speaker in. It's a bit ungainly to hold. So, yep, we have machine screw inserts, so I have no fear of that. So now I'm going to try to navigate around the reverb tank, which the speaker is very much sticking to, and try to get it lined up here. Now this is tough because Warehouse, unfortunately, didn't puncture the surround, or the kind of doping surround. So I'm gonna have to kind of do that on my own. See how it's pretty easy to push through, actually. So, okay, we got our first screw in, partially. Might be a bit of a challenge due to the surround kind of, and the glue kind of getting in the way. There we go. Now we're threading. Okay, let's do the other ones. I'm gonna go in a star pattern because It's just the way to do stuff. When you have something really big like this, you kind of want to go in a crisscross pattern. Now, obviously you can't do that for the whole way because we have an even number. So you'll have to go to the adjacent one at some point. Oh, shoot. Nice. Created the first scratch on this beautiful orange colored basket. I'm a big fan of this orange basket, if you couldn't tell. Thank you, Warehouse. I'm in no way affiliated with any brand whatsoever. I just pick stuff that I like and I buy it, and then I play it and I tell you about it. Okay, so next we have the hookup, and let me try to bring you in here camera-wise, and this darn tube's gonna be in the way. But basically, most speakers, they have these little tabs down here. I don't know if you can see that. And then you just pretty much just take the clip and you shove it on, so it's a quick release type of deal for the most part. If I wanted to, I could solder them in, but you know, most amps are, it's low enough voltage, it's usually not a big deal. There's just a lot of current. So, okay, so that's in there. Now let's put the back on the amp and we'll get it fired up. I guess if I really wanted to be pedantic, I could test polarity, or I could test continuity between these, but I think we'll be good to go. I will do the 9-volt battery test though real quick. Okay, so you hear that noise. That means that the speaker is working because the battery caused the speaker to go to the extreme position. Okay, I'm gonna bag this guy up, put it away for a rainy day, or I'll sell it, whatever comes first. Now, depends on how desperate I am for cash. Okay, we'll bring the back of the amp back on. Now, I should say that I have played this amp for many, many years without the back of the amp on. I'm gonna hand thread these in so that way I make sure that I'm not stripping the threads that have been created into the wood, so I really don't want to damage. So speaker says 8 ohms. I'm plugged into the 8 ohm output. Some amps are switchable, some are not. You really want to open up your amp and look at what the speaker says before you buy a speaker, because you don't want to buy a speaker and then it turns out to be the wrong impedance. You really want to make sure you have the right impedance of your speaker before you know what impedance you need to have or what impedances your amp is capable of switching to. Some amps like this amp like this Ampeg have different outputs, so I can do one 4 ohm cabinet, one 8 ohm cabinet, one 16 ohm cabinet, or two 16 ohms plugged into the 8 ohm output, or two 8 ohm cabinets plugged into the 4 ohm outputs. I feel like these are tightened up nice and good, so let's fire the amp back up and get back to sound samples. The WGS instantly takes away that kind of like that the Celestion just has in spades, and it replaces it. The Celestion has this huge scoop at like 1.5 kilohertz. You can see on the frequency response graph, there's just this big notch chilling right there. But then above that, you have all this like kind of insane like grind. But what I love about the WGS is that even though there's clarity, like you can hear, it still makes the 59 in the Marauder still sound like it has life and clarity. It takes away more of that fizz and that aggression. And to some, you might find it a little bit too soft, but I think this speaker is going to have a different EQ sweet spot and a different microphone sweet spot. But I was finding just with like the Jazzmaster and the Strat and the Tele, you know, whenever I would use the Golden Boy or, you know, what I used to have, the Morning Glory, is that it would be just so unbelievably harsh and we'd have to push the microphone all the way to the edge and it would just be too much. But now it's sounding a whole lot better. It just has much more, it has clarity and punch and top end without sounding sizzly and kind of grating and aggressive on the ears. This takes forever, so please, if you found this video interesting or helpful, please give it a like, leave a comment, tell me what your favorite guitar speaker is and what speaker maybe I should try next. But I'm hoping that I don't have to try any other ones. I'm hoping I can keep the speaker for a long time because I think it sounds phenomenal. Just those clean tones were just great. Like the Celestion added a lot of brightness, which I did like on the humbuckers, but on single coils it was like, ugh, way too much. And the EQ, you know, on this amp doesn't really touch that region until you really crank that, wind that treble control down, and then you lose all that, lose all that stuff above 5K, which I kind of want. I want some of that stuff above 5K. I don't really want. I need to kind of notch out, you know, 2 to 3K, but this amp only boosts those frequencies. It can't actually cut them. So I think with this amp, I think the WGS is a massive improvement just from the few samples that I've heard, just from recording those examples you just heard. And I think I'm gonna sit with it and I'll update you later about what I decide to do, but I think this has massively improved the amp. And the whole British versus American debate, you know, a lot of people are worried that, you know, if you change from, you know, take a an amp that has a British speaker in it and go to an American, you're worried that the overdrive is going to sound all funny. I don't think so. I think the overdrive sounds fine. I think that in some scenarios, it might be nice to have more of a greenback style sound where you have darkness in the top, but you also still retain some of that kind of glassiness that those speakers have. But the G12P-80 is just way too much. So that's kind of my conclusion, is that the 7080, this speaker, heck yeah. And I think that just these, you know, the speaker thing can really make or break an amp, you know, the speaker that you put in the amp. So, you know, I think if you have a deluxe reverb that you find too bright or you don't like the sound of, pop this bad boy in it. Princeton with a 12-inch speaker, pop this bad boy in it. Blues Junior, you could pop this guy in there, although I think that amp could use a speaker like the 7080 to really give it some lift. But the WGS could also be nice if you have a Vox and you want it to be a little less Voxy, a little more Fendery. You could pop one of these speakers in there and it could really transform your sound. And if you want a 10-inch version, WGS also makes a 10-inch G10CS speaker, so it's the same great sound of the G12CS, but in a smaller package. All right, if you found this video fun, interesting, or helpful, please leave a like and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you would like to see from me next, or what your favorite guitar speaker is and what your amp is. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.